Welcome to the Head Shepherd podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ferguson, CEO at Next and Agri International, where we help livestock managers get the best out of their stock. Before we get started, a big thanks to our three fantastic sponsors. Allflex, part of MSD, perhaps better known as Cooper's Animal Health in Australia, offers one of New Zealand and Australia's largest livestock product portfolios with a comprehensive suite of animal health and management products. Heininger is a one-stop shop for wool harvesting and animal fibre removal. The Heininger team have a deep understanding of livestock agriculture, backed by Swiss engineering and a family business dedicated to manufacturing the best. ProA Livestock Equipment have been delivering industry-leading livestock handling systems to producers across Australia, New Zealand and beyond for the last 25 years to improve on-farm safety, efficiency and profitability. We are grateful to our sponsors for their support, helping us bring Head Shepherd to you each week. And now it's time to get on with this week's episode. Welcome back to Head Shepherd. You're with Ferg. Great to have you listening with us today. Today on the show, we have Tara Dwyer. Tara's the breeding manager at Headwaters, where she oversees the genetics program behind Lumina Lamb. Before we get into that, a couple of things to mention. One, I mentioned last episode, the 26-2000, it's definitely underway. So we've had a few people sign up to that Strava group, the 26-2000, 26 spelled out, the number 2000. Would love lots of you who are going to join us on our 2000K challenge next year. We've got that as a run, walk, ride or row. And got a few people wanting to do gym sessions. So however that looks is fine by us. If you think it's equivalent to running 2000Ks or moving 2000Ks, that's fine by us. Sign up to that Strava club. Good thing about Strava is you can log anything you're up to, whether it's on the erg or in the weight session, or and hopefully get lots of us in there trying to survive 2000 kilometres or 2000 kilometres equivalents, or for Cure Brain Cancer Foundation. And we're getting that. By the time this show's out, that page will be set up, and so we'll have a link in the show notes to people who can donate to that cause. Lots of people in the sheep research community have or are suffering from that disease at the moment, and obviously my good mate Tomo being one of them, and the core reason how this challenge got underway. On a lighter note, tonight on the Hub, we're having a live session talking about genomics. If you're listening to this on Monday, that is. So yeah, jump on and join Phoebe Eckerman and myself to talk about genomic breeding values in commercial cattle. Tools like FSelect from Angus are things that we've got a project underway, helping people use those tools most effectively, as well as understanding what their kind of impact can be. So a good opportunity to get on for a chat if you're interested in beef cattle. Right, we'll get underway with this week's show. Tara Dwyer joins us. Tara's, in addition to being that breeding manager at Headwaters, she's also a co-founder at Landify. She's recently completed a Kellogg Rural Leadership program. She's also involved with her husband Angus at the Wandle in Middlemarch, a station there. So lots of things going on in Tara's life. Pretty busy person. Great to carve out some time today to talk to Tara around a range of things, particularly around what she found in her Kellogg's report, as well as her work as breeding manager there at Headwaters. We'll get underway with this week's show. Welcome, Tara Dwyer, to Head Shepherd.
Hi, Ferg. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you, Tara. You're involved in lots of different things across the industry currently, and been busy doing Kellogg's and all sorts of things. We might start at the beginning, back where your career began, and sort of bring us up to current, and then we'll go through all of your current roles as we go through the interview.
Cool, sounds good. Well, just to start at the end, and then I'll go back to the beginning. I am currently the breeding manager for Headwaters, and Headwaters is the first cog in the Lumina value chain. But I grew up in North Otago on a sheep and beef farm there. My parents had a small property with a Suffolk stud, and as I was growing up, they did a lot of dairy beef as well. I spent about 5 of my adolescent years in Victoria. My parents thought they'd just get a change of scenery, and so we went farming over there for a few years, which was really cool. And then I went to Lincoln and did the ag science, which, really, really valuable for those that have done it or thinking about doing it will know that. And I guess it wasn't until probably my last year of school that I kind of committed to being part of the ag sector, to put it that way. I guess I realised maybe a bit later that, being part of food production in the primary industries was the place to be, and realised just it's more than just farming, right? There's a hell of a lot going on, which is really cool. So after Lincoln, my husband Gus and I went to Tasmania for a couple of years. We did a stint of farming over there, and that was really, really valuable. I guess that was the beginning of our career farm management, as it is. So we are career farm managers, I guess. We've moved around a wee bit, running other people's farms for them. But yeah, the stint in Tassie was really interesting. It's very similar production systems, more arid. We were in the central Midlands, so pretty dry place. But a lot going on. Farming merinos over there and cropping a lot of cereals. So cut our teeth on that, which was awesome. And learn a lot about some things that are unique to Tasmania, like growing poppies and a few other bits that were going on there, which was really cool. And after Tasmania, we came back to New Zealand and did 4 years managing a farm at Ettrick. And I had a few roles outside the farm gate from then. I worked for Farm IQ, selling that farm management software, and that's probably the first role I had where I really got more involved with technology. Really, I'm a prolific user of technology, really keen on all things livestock tech. So that was really, really cool. And obviously being out on the road, meeting lots of people. And I've had a few other, I guess, industry roles as well, but I keep coming back to inside the farm gate as well. And today we are at the Wandle at Middlemarch. We've been here just ticked over 5 years, and the Wandle is a part of the Lone Star Farms group of farms. So Gus and I manage this business. It's 2,500 hectares, relatively intensive. About a quarter of it is irrigated. Got a team of 8 here, and yeah, it's awesome. There's a lot going on. It's really cool to be part of, and it also works in really beautifully with my, I guess, day job with Headwaters, in that Lone Star is a big supplier and a big supplier of lamb into the Lumina value chain. So yeah, it all kind of marries together really nicely, if not a little bit incestuously, but it's pretty cool.
It is the South Island of New Zealand. A bit of incest is hard to avoid.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Yeah, lots of really cool history there. And maybe you sort of touched on tech, but I guess you and Gus there at the Wandle, is there any particular technology you've been deploying?
Yeah, that's putting it lightly. I did do some prep for this question, Ferg, and I wrote down all the platforms or bits of kit that we're using, and I got to 30 right. Platforms, right. or things that we use to manage livestock, manage people, admin. So I would put us in the prolific user category. And they're all, you can try something, and if it's doesn't fit the bill, it doesn't stick around, right? So these 30 or more things that we use, they're here to stay because they do fit the bill. And look, they're by and large, they all create efficiencies, and some of them aren't very exciting efficiencies because they're in the admin space or they're in the human resources space or whatever, right? But some of them are really exciting, like we've just put collars on some cattle, and we do a great deal of animal livestock management. Water management, obviously having irrigation, if you're going to make the most of that resource, you've got to really drill down into when you're putting water on, how much you're putting on, all that sort of thing. So yeah, we use a lot of tech, and yeah, it's kind of hard to imagine reverting back to not having the knowledge that we do by using these platforms and these pieces of kit, so that we're managing our resources here, be they physical, human, or the livestock systems, to the absolute best way they can be to get the most productive and profitable outcomes possible.
Awesome. 30 is impressive. And I guess even things like admin, if you make that more efficient, it means we do less of it, which is awesome. So
exactly.
So maybe give us your top 2 or 3 that if they disappeared, you'd decide you're going to go and do something other than farming. Is there a couple there? Is there a couple that really game changers? Or
I think, and probably the ones that are key to us are possibly specific to this system, right? I'm not sure if others would feel the same, but we are really heavily reliant on FarmX and Farm IQ as record keeping, absolutely record keeping, but planning as well, right? So through FarmX, we know what our feed curve is likely going to be, and we can make the decisions early, knowing what's coming ahead of us by historical data and the new data that we feed into it. So that's really, really important that we're not planning for today, right? We're planning for, what are we, the end of December now, we're planning for autumn, we're planning for winter, all that sort of stuff. And I guess specific to this system would be the irrigation management. So we have variable rate management on the pivots. That's really important to make sure that we're not overwatering stuff, or we're excluding the areas of those blocks that should not be getting 10 mils every couple of days applied to them, that sort of thing. And alongside the putting water on is checking the soil moisture to make sure that we're not wasting water. There's no need to exceed field capacity, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah, things like FarmX, tactical decision making that really take you from kind of waking up not knowing when you're going to run out of feed or whatever to actually thinking about what's happening in June, July when you're sitting in December, which is a very different way to think, and pretty nice bit of software to help you do that.
Exactly. Like fly off the seat of your pants farming. Don't get me wrong, it can be exciting. It can be quite stressful too.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily feel like we're making life easier with 30 different platforms and techs, but that's the idea.
Yeah. And I assume, I guess all of us want integration, and that's where the world will end up. So all will be well.
Let's hope so, yeah.
Yeah. If we move on to the Headwaters, the day job, as you call it, breeding manager at Headwaters, obviously, as you've talked about, the genetic pillar behind Lumina Lamb. We had Simon Saunders recently on the show who talked about that program a bit, but I guess from your perspective as the person who gets to make the call on the genetics that end up in a box or end up on a plate in a restaurant somewhere, what are the big focuses on both the two different lines, maternal line and the terminal line?
Yeah, so I guess the things that underpin the Headwaters breed of sheep is the consumer needs. So for us, being the producers of a lamb product, that's eating quality. So and for us, eating quality is intramuscular fat and polyunsaturated fatty acids. So those are two traits which are both moderately heritable, can make good gains on them if you be consistent. Those are the things that are in the middle of the spotlight, right? They're key focuses, and that's possibly a little bit slightly different to other sheep studs in New Zealand in that their consumer is the farm client, right? They are still our consumer, but our consumer that the breed affects even further along the value chain is the consumer sitting in the restaurant eating Lumina. So we have to make sure years and years before they get the product that the breed is sitting in a position to deliver the experience that they need, so that they keep wanting to eat it, so that they keep buying it, right? So that's kind of the eating quality stuff is a non-negotiable for both the maternal and the terminal, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel with that, right? That's always improving. We will never get to a point where we stop worrying about eating quality. We'll just keep investing and keep working every year and every breeding cycle to make better decisions to keep improving that. And then going back domestically, our client here is obviously the sheep farmers in New Zealand. So we also have to focus, again, without much compromise, on the maternal traits that affect what's happening on people's farms, that affect their bottom line and their productivity and their costs. So all things maternal, reproduction, mothering ability, lamb survival, that's the stuff that affects final outcome, or output, I should say, and then there's the costs. So we're moving the maternal breed to being more of a low input sheep, so focusing on resilience, facial eczema, less stags, not actively chasing bareness, but it's down the list there a little bit, which means you end up with a little bit less wool, unfortunately. We haven't given up on wool, but there's just a lot of priorities ahead of wool. So yeah, the maternal is definitely, there's a lot in that, right? There's all things reproduction, there's low input traits, there's eating quality, and they've all got to happen together in the same direction. And our terminal's interesting. So we are in early stages with our terminal flock, and we sell that ram to sheep farmers that are already in the Lumina value chain, and they have some Headwaters Genetics in their maternal flock. And so again, all things eating quality. And that low input stuff is actually really important as well, because we sit in a value chain. There is so much data collected along our value chain, not just, so firstly we've got the stud operation and the breeding, and then we've got the commercial farmers collecting data, and then we've got a whole lot of carcass data. And so that means that we can look at what lambs are being killed when, and we can also understand who they're sired by. So I can see that a terminal side lamb, the mean kill date of our terminal side Lumina lambs is only 3 weeks earlier than the mean of our maternal side Lumina lambs. So to think that a terminal can just focus on meat and growth probably doesn't stack up with what the data is telling us. It actually needs to not have DAGs, and it needs to be resilient to worms, and it needs to be able to, survive and thrive right through the summer, because the data is telling us that that's about the mean kill date. So I guess, and our finishing system is slightly different to probably commodity systems, in that lambs need to spend time on our chicory and red clover forage, and so they've got to go through that process before they can leave the farm. But it does mean that we can't just singularly focus our terminal on meat quality and growth and nothing else. They've got to have that resilience to all the things that they're going to experience before they eventually leave the farm. And I'm sure that mean kill date is not that different from the industry, I would have thought.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting stat, and I guess that's the beauty of being in a value chain where the data is flowing up and down. You kind of get to know that stuff, whereas most people never get to understand all that sort of stuff, particularly over a range of different geographies, which is the strength of the database. Cool. In your spare time, which I'm not sure when that was, but you did your Kellogg's Rural Leadership Program. Firstly, maybe just introduce what that is for those who are outside of NZ, and then maybe do that first, then we'll talk about what you found.
Yeah, okay. So the Kellogg Rural Leaders Program is a leadership course aimed at people who work or are in the primary sector. It's run by rural leaders who also facilitate the Nuffield program in New Zealand. So people might be familiar with Nuffield if they're not familiar with Kellogg's. But yes, it was a 6-month stint, a few weeks away with a group of people, just learning to become the better version of me, And as part of that, we're tasked with undertaking a report on a topic of our choice. And so I focused my topic on sort of the state of the sheep industry in New Zealand. I wanted to understand kind of where we're at today, because for anyone who works in sheep and beef will know that sheep have been disappearing from our landscape since the mid 1980s. And so I wanted to firstly for myself understand why that is, what's been going on for the last 4 decades that has been happening or been causing that, I suppose. And then secondly, talk to some people in the know, some people that have a vested interest in the sheep sector, and I guess ultimately come up with some ideas or some thoughts on how to turn things around. Yeah. So what I found was that the sheep numbers have been declining in New Zealand at a rate of 2.5% per annum since 84, when the subsidies were removed. Yeah.
Yeah, righto. And one of the confronting findings in your report, and something that I guess is becoming more and more apparent, is that essentially lambs weaned per ewe, like Kiwis were sort of renowned for making massive gains whenever that was, and I guess in the 80s, before that. But then over the last, number of decades now, we're pretty much flatlined our lambs weaned per ewe, and that's basically stored. I guess what did you find, or what do you think is behind the fact that we're not making any more gain?
Yeah, so just to illustrate that a bit further, the I guess relatively limited data that I was able to find has told me that the rate of reproductive gain in our ewe flocks has been relatively flat since, say, the early 90s. It's been improving at an annual rate of somewhere between 0 and 1%. So we can just call that flat, right? Ewes in the early 90s produced about 1.24 lambs per annum, and today, according to Beef and Lambs 2024 stats, have produced 1.3 lambs. So we're just not getting more.
No.
Yeah. But cages of carcass per ewe has improved over that time. So that has gone from around 13 kilos of carcass per ewe to about 20, according to Beef and Lamb, about 24.5 kilos of carcass in 2024. So I guess that would tell me that the focus inside the farm gate has been on that metric of output, focusing on, and that's a relatively metric of output to quantify and to track, right? Because people sell their lambs and they get a sales slip or they get a killing sheet or whatever from the processing company. And so I guess it seems evident that the focus on improvement has been on that output, possibly because it's so easy to track. And I guess that in real terms, that is being sheep farmers or breeders focusing on growth and lean meat yield. One of the sides of that, I guess, would be an improvement in feed efficiency. I'm not convinced that was like a dedicated target, but that's an outcome, I guess, of a more efficient ewe, and that she's producing more carcass. The ewe has grown too, right? We have bigger ewes today than we did in 1990. I'm not sure if that's true in Merino flocks food, but it's definitely true in dual purpose.
Yeah, I think everything has got bigger. Cows, sheep, all breeds. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas that internal productivity of the ewe herself, I'm making some assumptions here, but I think that probably hasn't been a focus because it's harder to do. Essentially it's the gains in reproduction are slower. You've got to be more dedicated and persistent and consistent, and there's so many external factors that affect ewe reproductive efficiency, right? Like your spring climate and all that sort of stuff. So I think, I just think that there has been that focus on that metric of yield output because it's been possibly a bit more achievable. And that's not a judgment. That's just my 2 cents on that, I think.
Yeah, it's intriguing, and I guess we're always at risk of the easy to measure stuff. And so if it's easy and cheap to measure, then we'll measure it and then we'll select on it because that's something we can measure. But it doesn't always add up with profit, and repro is a classic example where we did pretty well with blunt tools, like just keep the twins and breed from the twins is pretty much what most of the game was made of. A few imports of genetics, but really in the Romney flocks it was just pretty blunt tools of if they had twins they stay, and if there are a twin they stay, and then that worked pretty well. But yeah, as you rightly point out, when those blunt tools stop working and you need to put the effort in to get more information, that's when it gets hard. And it's a good explanation of why maybe you haven't made many gains lately. In your report, you describe something that around potentially reaching a biological and system ceiling. Yeah, maybe run us through what that means. And I guess a flat line of progress is a ceiling, as you rightly point out. Are we asking too much of our current genetics, or is the environment, have we reached the potential of the environment with our genetics, or are we just not doing things well enough? Are we selecting for the wrong stuff, I guess, is something I'd be keen to know.
Yeah. And I guess I've termed my learning as a ceiling, I guess because it's illustrated by the lack of reproductive improvement over several decades. I think the ceiling, look, it's not a concrete ceiling, it's a thatch, right? It's absolutely possible to break through there. But it feels like, as illustrated by the data that I found, we must have hit the peak of what is possible in our current management systems. So I guess the next step, or to break through that ceiling, is going to require doing things differently. It's not just going to happen by repeating our existing systems. And obviously I'm talking in averages, and there is danger in talking in averages, and I don't love to. I guess it's just the most digestible way of thinking about the whole nation's sheep flock.
Yeah.
So I absolutely acknowledge that there is outliers on both ends, right? There are flocks that are sub 100%, and there are flocks that are 160% consistently. So acknowledge both those ends. But if we're talking about the mean, which we kind of have to, then yeah, we must be at the limits of the current management methods, I suppose, is where I've got to. And so if we're going to break through that ceiling, the management methods are going to have to change, and they are changing. And that is that's possibly somewhat happening because the landscape that sheep are being run on is also changing, right? We don't have sheep in easy care land anymore, and we haven't for quite some time. And they're possibly still getting pushed out of those, land class 3, 4, 5 into the 7, 8s at the moment. And so the improvements are only going to come, I think, and I'm basing this on several decades worth of lack of improvement by changing the method of production.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty valid assumption that, like, if we don't make a significant shift in what we're doing, I think that's what it's becoming more and more obvious, that if there isn't some fundamental shift in how we go about business, then we are expecting to stay on this flat line. Like, I think, and that comes through, obviously all the production measures, all those 30 platforms that you're using, like things that we'll learn from this new way of being able to measure stuff. But equally, our knowledge as an industry of things like deploying reproductive breeding values and stuff, like there's still a big chunk of people are buying their rams without using any of the available information. There's a big chunk of rams being bred without even providing that information. So, I think big shifts are needed, but I guess the beautiful quote that the future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed. And I think that's always very true. There's people out there, as you've already pointed out, that are doing things really well and probably are busting through ceilings, but it's going to need a combination of genetic potential and management shifts in ways that we haven't imagined or aren't all doing yet anyway, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, this sounds so obvious to point it out, right? But the crux of the issue in my report is that sheep farming is a uncompetitive land use, right? The profitability is uncompetitive compared to alternate land use. And I know we know this, and I'm pointing out the obvious. But when we're talking about system and method changes of production, that idea that you just spoke to of, a sheep farmer having absolute reliance on their ram breeder to do that work for them, and that being the entirety of their reproductive management plan, that's going to have to change. The responsibility cannot sit just with the stud breeder, because your ewe flock is arguably a decade behind them, right?
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to look inside your farm gate and at your ewe flock yourself. Use the techs that already exist. This isn't, like you just said, this isn't tomorrow. We can actually improve things today with the stuff that's already there, that already exists. And that's I believe going forward that is the responsibility of the sheep flock owner, not the ram breeder solely, personally.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And another thing identified was the knowledge gap at the individual ewe level in your report, which is something I'm pretty passionate about. And it's we see it all the time. If we break a ewe flock into its quartiles, then there's the top 25% are doing amazing stuff that we'd all be driving around in Dodge Rams and loving life if all our ewes were doing that. And then there's the bottom 25%, which would be all driving around or probably on our push bikes and like they're producing bugger all, and that exists in every sheep flock. And so I think it's an interesting. Well, I think it's a really intriguing challenge as to how we do that better. And you're right, the tools are out there now. And they will get better. Everything will get better as we go. How big? Yeah, I mean, you've already sort of stated that's a pretty big problem. I mean, what do you reckon the consequences are if we actually get those selection decisions right? What does that future farm look like where we actually are doing a good job within our ewe flocks?
If we start better identifying the top performers through more knowledge on their genuine outputs. So right now, obviously, we don't know anything beyond preg scanning. We know what they scan, but at scale and in a commercial setting, it's just not feasible to manually track ewe performance at weaning and whatnot. It just doesn't happen. So we actually know very, very little about any ewe. And so our selection, what ram we put to what ewe, is actually, I believe, pretty random. You do random things, you get random outcomes. That's where I think we're where I think we're at today. What we need to know about her is how efficient she genuinely is. What's she weaning? Who's she weaning? What do they weigh? What is their eventual carcass? And very importantly, who are the ewe lambs out of those top performers? Because that's who you need to retain, right? And we're talking a long-term game, aren't we, Ferg? This is not a start knowing more about the ewe and see outcomes in 1 to 2 years. We're talking, this is a long-term consistent approach. These traits have a heritability of, let's say, 10% roughly. There's a long-term gains, but it's cumulative, right? It's like your interest. You just keep stacking it. So I think I personally think, and I know you agree, I see individual ewe management as, the next frontier of sheep farming that is going to break through that ceiling that we seem to be stuck under today. And if you do it right, you don't just have to focus on the ewe herself. We've got the tech, we've got the tag tech, we've got the technology in our processing plants, we've got the knowledge of the supply chains to follow that through to make sure that the outcomes of that, of an improvement in ewe productivity, have a flow through and improvement in lamb product profitability as well. It's not just going to be ewe productivity that I think, an improvement in ewe productivity that saves the sheep sector. It's going to be a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't make the link, you can't make the link. Like if you haven't worked out which ewe that lamb come from, you don't know. Not only do you not know her productivity, you also don't know that lamb's. Well, you can't link those things together. So yeah, that's a fundamental gap that sits in our industry that will be solved, and when it's solved, is potentially the next thing that gets us off our little ceiling and maybe puts a ceiling somewhere else, but at least we break through where we're at now.
But I guess the thing to be clear about is that what we're talking about right now, this is not hypothetical. Like the management techniques and the technology to learn more about an individual ewe, people can implement today. And they should be, in some of the ways they should be already. You should be monitoring body condition to see who's maintaining and who's losing. You're working on Gene Smith. There's cheap parentage. There's smart shepherd collars. The technology to monitor performance already exists. I think we get trapped all the time in talking about this hypothetical future that someone else is going to sort, and then we're just going to implement. It's not tomorrow. It's actually, we can do it if you want to. If you want to be if you want to keep being a sheep farmer and be in it for the long haul. I reckon that's the next thing to really hone into, to make your sheep system more profitable so that you can afford to keep sheep farming is essentially what needs to happen.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's pretty clear that there is a need for investment in new tech, new infrastructure. I guess if you had unlimited resources and time right now, what would you sort of click your fingers and commission?
Yeah, I guess when I think about implementing the things that I believe need to be implemented and to improve sheep farming productivity, I kind of know and I appreciate that it's not going to be sustainable if it equals more work, right? We're not out here looking to add to our sheep management workload. So we need some techs that actually minimize it one way or another. And I've been thinking about, the uber wealthy around the world. The billionaires will go and get like full body scans to check their entire body for absolutely everything that might be there or might be wrong with them. Surely that, and I think a lot of them might be MRI. if you can do that in a human, surely you can do that in a sheep. If I had unlimited money, I'd go and get a sheep one.
Sheep scanner.
A sheep scanner that a sheep can just wander on through or put it in there, and then heaps more about that is her her lungs and liver and heart healthy? What's her subcutaneous fat level as a proxy for body condition? How much IMF does she have? How many fetuses does she have? I reckon a rich person full body scanner would be pretty handy.
Yeah, that sounds like sounds like a good thing to have on a sheep farm.
Yeah, I should probably put myself through it too.
I would be do it this side of Christmas maybe, but
yeah.
Nah, excellent. I think we could talk about the future forever, and I think the companies like Headwaters are actually creating it rather than sitting around talking about it. So it is, it must be pretty exciting to be part of a company that is wanting to make change, is making change, has made change in history, and will continue to drive forward, which would make that a pretty nice place to work most days, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's great. As you say, just always looking to the future and thinking more about tomorrow than today, I guess is that mindset that we're in, which is really awesome. And look, we have an absolute vested interest in the sheep industry in New Zealand. We don't want sheep to keep disappearing. We want to be part of a prosperous future, whatever that may look like. We are in a position to have some influence, either directly or indirectly through our suppliers, support them in being better and doing better, and just striving for continuous improvement. And the thing that we're not continuously improving in, I found in my report, is productivity. So I guess if there's something that we can focus on that's going to have a lasting effect, I hope, would be that. Yeah, excellent.
All right, Tara, we'll pull it up there because we could talk all day, but there's a couple of questions we ask everybody, and the first one of those is, what's the last thing you changed your mind about?
Changing my mind all the time. That's my prerogative as a woman. But before I did my Kellogg topic, I guess I had maybe aligned my thinking with the rhetoric that we have in the industry, that the land uses that have taken over sheep land is the cause of the sheep farming decline. I no longer feel that way. I feel like I have a better understanding of what are the genuine causes, which is lack of productivity and profitability. And so I now see those other land uses that have come through in the last several decades, all the dairy conversions, we've had a lot of forestry, we've had all that rhetoric from fed farmers around that ruining sheep farming, etc. I just personally don't agree with that anymore. I believe those land use changes to be a symptom of sheep farming no longer being profitable on that land rather than a cause. And so if we're not pointing the finger outwards, we've got to point it inwards, and we've got to think about how we can change our own story rather than worrying about what other land users are doing, I suppose. Yeah. So that's been a relatively big mindset change for me, but I'm glad I've had it, because you can get pretty caught up in blaming all the rest of the primary sector for why sheep are disappearing. But ultimately, if we want to fix it, or we want to still exist in 3 decades, we're going to have to sort it out. And so we need to look within and start from inside the sheep system, I guess.
Yeah, very well put. I think it was this year or maybe last year. I finally had the realization that the world doesn't actually need a sheep industry like we've seen. I always kind of thought, oh, well, that's all right, it'll go up and down. But then you hear about like states in the US that went from massive sheep flocks to nothing. And you kind of, I guess the world needs sheep somewhere, but it doesn't have to be New Zealand or Australia, which was kind of very confronting when you get in that, when you get to that realization, and then another realization, which is really important, that the only way we walk through that is to bring them to productivity, bring them to profitability, reduce labour use, do that through all tech and all the genetics and all the things that we know. And as you've already pointed out, like doing doing random things, you get random results or whatever. Whatever that your earlier quote was, but it's such a massive opportunity.
Yeah. And that's been another realization for me, probably over the last couple of years, Ferg, is that no one across the world is going to miss New Zealand's lamb if and when it's gone. The world doesn't need our lamb. We want the world to need our lamb. And that's quite a fundamentally different way of looking at our supply chains, which I think is going to have to evolve over the coming years. No one will miss us when we're gone, if sheep keep disappearing. And so we have to make ourselves worthy of being eaten and purchased and a profitable land use.
Very well put. The last question we ask everyone is, who's the best human you've had the pleasure to learn from?
I'm very lucky in my role as breeding manager that I get to work with a whole lot of really cool, very smart people and learn from them every day. One small group that I do learn a lot from is if I have a small advisory group, which you are a member now, Ferg. But I have a group of people. I've got Peter Fennessy and Trevor Cook, and I've had Alan McDermott for a long time. And these guys and yourself cumulatively have a huge amount of knowledge about farming and livestock and genetics, and have an infinite amount of enthusiasm for sheep farming. And so I'm really, really lucky that I get to have you guys in my corner and be picking your brains all the time, learning from you, getting you to, I guess, challenge me as well and push my thinking. So that's one of the best parts of my job, I guess, that I get to have access to some people who are significantly smarter than me to help me do my job and remain really enthusiastic about sheep genetics. So that's something really cool.
I think we could argue about the significantly smarter bit, but I won't argue about how cool that room is. It's I'm only a recent addition, obviously, but it was definitely one of the highlights of what I do now is getting in rooms like that, and it's a great group of people that all have a common purpose, and obviously with you being a massive contributor to that as well. But it's pretty cool and I think sort of speaks a lot to just good governance, doing things well is about inviting other people into your business and getting different knowledge, that rather than we don't have to have all the same battle scars to learn from other people's.
Yeah.
So awesome, Tara. It's been really, really good to have a yarn and to go through those insights, because I think it's really critical that some of those things that you've sort of written down in your report, but that we've been talking about today, is that it is a lot about the mindset and bugger all about the biology. It's the biology will get sorted if we get ourselves in the right with the right approach. And you're having a serious crack, and really appreciate your time.
Cool, awesome. Thanks for having me, Ferg.
Thanks for listening, and thanks again to our 3 fantastic sponsors. Heinegger, who are proud world leaders in the manufacturing and supply of professional sheep shearing and clipping equipment. Allflex Livestock Intelligence, part of MSD Animal Health, offer extensive livestock product portfolio focused on animal health management, all backed up by exceptional service. ProWay Livestock Equipment offer turnkey solutions from design through to professional installation, and specialise in facilities that are tailored to your specific operation for all livestock species. We thank these 3 great companies for their ongoing support of the Head Shepherd podcast.